So we're going into week 3 of the Illustrator class, and I wanted to go over the pen tool with you today. We've been working with the shape tools over here. So last week you drew some shapes and you took your direct selection tool and you learned how to kind of modify them, rotate them, scale them. And what you also saw was that all your shapes that you created with your shape tools were connected with these points. And these points are what you create when you use your pen tool. And the points are then connected with lines. And so together, the points and the lines create closed and open paths. So how do you use your pen tool over here? This is a really great tool. It's a tool you're going to use a lot in this class. And the pen tool, if you push down with your mouse, has 4 tools total. The pen tool, the add anchor point tool, the delete anchor point tool, and the convert anchor point tool. So we're going to start out with the add anchor point tool and the delete anchor point tool. So the little points on the side of this shape are called anchor points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my add anchor point tool, which is the pen tool that has a little plus next to it. I'll tear off the tab so we can see all of the pen tools at once. And I'm going to go to the line that connects the 2 anchor points at the top here, and I'm going to click. And once I do that, another point appears on the line. I can then grab my direct selection tool, select that point, and basically edit the point. So you can add and delete points really easily using the add anchor point tool and the delete anchor point tool. So I'll go ahead and delete that point. I'll grab my delete anchor point tool and click on it. Oops, and if you get this little message, that means you weren't right on top of the point. So just click OK, and you might need to zoom in. Sometimes it's really helpful to grab your magnifying glass and zoom in a little so you can see what you're doing. I'll grab my delete anchor point tool again and click. And this time it worked. It clicked and the point got deleted. Okay, so another tool that's going to be really useful is this convert anchor point tool. Because as you probably noticed, when you were creating your shapes, you were kind of stuck depending on what kind of lines you created. So when you used the rectangular tool, you got 4 straight lines. But if you wanted to make these lines curved, you could easily do that by converting the points. And that's what this tool does. So I'm going to click on this convert anchor point tool. I'm going to click on a point here, and I'm going to drag. And as I drag, I get these handles. These handles are called direction handles, and they allow me to kind of drag out and change the lines here so that they're curved instead of straight. Okay, so after you've kind of played with the shape tools a little bit and discovered your add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert anchor point, I want you to go ahead and really start to play with your pen tool, which is your free-form drawing tool. The pen tool allows you to create these anchor points wherever you want. You can just kind of click inside your space, and everywhere you click, a line will connect from the last point. When you get back to that first point you created, a little circle will appear next to your pen, and this means that you're basically closing your path. And once you close your path, you then can start a new path, and this path, the only way you're going to add more points on this path is if you use your add anchor point tool or your delete anchor point tool. You can also control the type of point you create. So we've been looking at kind of straight points, just connected with straight lines, and I talked about this convert anchor point tool and how you convert points so that you can get these curved lines. Well, you can actually create a curved line just by clicking with your path tool, your pen tool, and dragging. So if you click and drag before you let go of your mouse, you can pull out these direction handles, and these direction handles set the curve. So when you pull down, you're going to get a curve that goes under, and when you pull up, you're going to get a curve that goes above. So I'll click my next point, and then I'll drag again before I release, and just kind of control the direction, and then I'll click again. Now I am starting to create these lines, and you'll notice quickly when you start to use this pen tool that it's a little bit difficult to kind of predict where the curve is going to be. So one thing you can do for yourself to make it a little bit easier is you can actually turn a point from a curved point to just a straight line by clicking with your mouse. If you go on top of the point using your pen tool and click, you turn that point from a curved point to just a straight point. And then when I click my next point, I can actually drag, and I'm not and my curve isn't determined by that direction handle that was there. So we'll look at this a little bit in class today so that you understand that you can always click on the last point you drew and kind of reconvert it to a straight point. And then when you make your next point, you can click and drag and set the direction. So it makes it a little bit more controllable, especially when you're starting out. Eventually, you'll be able to really control the direction of the curve if you use this tool enough. But right now, it's a little bit difficult. Okay, so what are we going to be doing today? We're going to be looking at this butterfly graphic, and if you can see, it's just a picture of a butterfly, and there's lots of shapes in the pattern of the wings. And what I want you to do, just to kind of get used to using your pen tool, is to draw these shapes out with your pen tool so you get lots of experience. So basically, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up creating this beautiful colored butterfly where you're going to choose a color palette for it, and then when we turn off our photograph, we'll just have this really beautiful color butterfly graphic. Okay, let me turn that off for a second so we can start here. Now notice that the first thing I probably want to do when I draw this butterfly is I want to create a basic color for myself that's going to be the entire butterfly. And so what I did first is I grabbed my pen tool and I made sure that I had a fill of none and a stroke of black, just so I could see what I was doing. Now you can always change this stroke and fill later by selecting the paths and just clicking in your color palette. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to click here and I'm going to go to the top of the wing and I'm going to make another point. Now notice I'm not doing this. If I do this and just make these little tiny points, what's going to happen is you're going to get a really jaggedy path. So what I want to do is I want to try and really make beautiful curves that aren't real jaggedy. So I clicked one point down here, and now I'm going to go to the top of the wing. I'm going to click another point. Now I'm not going to let go of the mouse. I'm going to drag, and I'm just going to kind of make the line create the curve. Okay, so the fewer points you create sometimes, the better the path, because it will be a lot more flowing and it'll be a lot less jaggedy. Okay, so now, I remember I told you that trick where you can go on top of the last point you created and click. I'm going to do that now and get rid of that long handle, because that long handle, if I left it there, would set the direction for the next curve and it would kind of loop out too far. It wouldn't follow the curve of the butterfly. So I'm just going to kind of come here, see if I can do this one. I'm going to click here. Okay, that's looking good. So then I'm going to kind of drag it out, make it fit. Click here. Now this starts to get a little bit more challenging because there's little bumps here. So if you just want to make the wing a little smoother, that's fine. I'm going to go here and click again, just kind of follow the curve. So you can kind of see my process here. I'm just kind of going, clicking. It doesn't have to be exactly on the line. You're just trying to get it as close as possible. And to really try to make those curves smooth when they need to be smooth. So don't just do this. Click, 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 click. Make sure you're dragging and setting the direction of the curve. Okay, and then I'm going to trace around the whole butterfly. When I get back to here, I'm going to close it. Remember, you have to close your path. And so what I will end up with eventually is one closed entire butterfly shape. And then once I have that, I might go ahead and fill it with a color. I might just leave it with a black stroke. So that's kind of up to you. If you leave it with a black stroke, you can actually fill it later. And then you don't have to, you can turn off the fill and then you can kind of see what's underneath. So to start out with, maybe just kind of create your butterfly just with a black stroke and no color. So I'll go to my color. do that, I'm going to grab my color palette. I'm going to click black here. Notice I have a fill of none. And then I'm going to go in. I'm just going to start to have fun. I'm going to go in all these different shapes and start to draw them with my pen tool, kind of clicking and overlapping. So if I want to overlap two shapes on top of each other, I'm going to kind of pay attention to where they are within the layer arrangement here. So I'm going to go around, and this will be my first shape here, kind of following this curve. And you always want to close them in this graphic because you're going to be filling them with color. And if you don't close your shape, the fill won't be very precise. So I'm going to fill it here. And now notice there's a little shape on top. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that one, kind of dragging in here, setting the curve, and then I'll just overlap it when I fill my color. So once I get my entire butterfly kind of finished here, I'll then fill it with color and kind of play with a color palette. So you can always fill later. So I'll just go ahead and show you what I mean. Let's say I want to make my butterfly green. That's my stroke. I'll go for my fill. Okay, there's my green fill. Then I'm going to select this path here, which was my second path, and I'll make that purple, and then I'll select this path, and I'll make this path green again so that I have purple, green, purple. And eventually what you'll end up with is kind of a beautiful filled color graphic. So also pay attention to your layers. When you start to layer paths, you want to make sure that your grayscale photograph is always on the bottom, right? So you want it to be kind of here on the bottom of your graphic, and it should just kind of stay there. And then after you draw your butterfly and complete all the shapes, you can go ahead and turn it off, and then it'll just disappear, and you can just have your butterfly graphic in place and then see that. Don't worry about the antennas right now. That's something that you don't have to, we haven't really gone over that yet, so don't worry about those. You can just kind of do the basic shape of the butterfly with all of the colors in the wings. And really the requirements are that every shape is a closed shape, and that you really try to use the least amount of points possible that you can use to create really smooth curves. Okay, so I'll be working with you in class today and on Thursday, and then we also are going to go into creating our portraits, which will be really cool.